price per rail, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make mitered cabinet doors. Alright, the first thing I did was cut my stock to rough length and I ripped it down to its final dimension. In the CMS I have a beading bit that has multiple beads on it, and I have it set to cut 2 beads into our stock. So let's fire up the CMS and make a cut. Okay, I've run all my pieces through and I've got the profile that I want on one edge. Now what I'm going to do is lower the bit and run the pieces through and cut just one bead on the other edge. So to do that, what I'm going to do is flip the guards out of the way, reach under the table and unlock the router, the plunge lock on the router. And then I've got this crank to adjust the height of the bit from the table, and there's markings right on the table that show me which way to turn the crank in order to raise or lower the bit. So I want to lower the bit, so I'll be turning it this direction, and I just want one bead exposed. I'm going to eyeball that and get that close, and that's pretty close. I'll lock the router again. Flip the guards back down, and I'll test this out on a piece of scrap, then dial this setting in just right for what I want, and then I'll run all the pieces through. Alright, now I'm going to set the height of the bit and set the fence. I've got a couple of setup bars to do that. I've got a 1/4 inch set behind the bit, and I'm going to use that to set the fence so we can have a 1/4 inch between the bit and the fence. I'm going to tighten down the knobs for the fence. While I'm here, I'm also going to double check to make sure these wings are tightened down. And they are. Now I'm going to set the height of the bit, and I'm going to make my groove in 2 passes. So I'm going to just set it real quick to about 3/16, and then my second pass will be 3/8. Okay, now I've got that about where I want. I want to lock the plunge lock on the router. Now I can plug the router back in and engage the power switch on the router itself. Flip the guards down in place, and now I should be able to run my stock through. reset the bit height to make my second pass. Alright, now what I'm going to do is cut the miters on my pieces, and what I'm going to do is first make a cut. I'm going to put one miter on the piece, then I'll swing the saw the other direction, and I have a stop set up in order to get my length exactly right. What I also have here is a backer block to just prevent any blowout from the back. Alright, now I'm going to swing the saw around and cut the second miter. And there are my pieces. Now I'm going to repeat that process on all the other pieces. Okay, here are my layout marks. I just used a square and a pencil and just laid these out and put some marks across. They're index marks for my domino joiner here. And like I said, what I'm going to do is put a domino in there, and that'll reinforce this joint. Alright, I've got my piece clamped down, and now what I'm going to do is set up to make my domino mortise. And for this piece I'm going to use the tight setting, and for the corresponding joint I'll use the wider setting so we can have a little bit of wiggle room in order to get these miters lined up just right. And there's our joint. Yeah, I finished cutting all my mortises for the domino tenons, and I measured and cut my panel, plywood panel that will be inserted, and I like to pre-finish it just so that as it expands and contracts there won't be any unfinished edge shown. So let me slide this in. Slide this piece back on. Okay, so here's the piece. A little bit of finish sanding, and I'll glue this up. And once it's glued up, I'll probably do just a little bit more finish sanding, the old any squeeze out that might happen, and then pretty much have a finished project. So. All right, I've got the piece clamped up, and I wiped off any excess squeeze out. And what I did is I arranged these clamps. I've got two clamps going each direction in order to hold these miters together really tight. And what I've done is I've offset them from the corners a little bit. What that allows me to do is to get in here and measure the diagonals to make sure that the piece is square. Okay, here's the completed door.